Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the virtual CISO moment. As you can tell, this is a little bit different place where I'm doing it from. I'm actually still in Huntsville, Alabama, where last week I attended the National Cyber Summit. It's last week to you. It's still this week to me because we record this in advance. Amazing technology. I did want to mention a couple of things from there. I did speak on information security challenges and opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses. I may or may not have that audio only up at some point in time. I got to see what the quality is when it's done, but I did record it. If you're interested in a different version, you can check out the YouTube channel. That's ampersand BCISO, and there is a version there for B-Sides Nashville in 2024, early this year. Second thing I wanted to do that when I was at the conference, I ran into my wonderful friends at the EC Council. If you recall, I did a quick talk with them on CrowdStrike a few weeks ago. That's also on the VCSO channel. The link to it is, if you're interested. They are doing Hacker Halted 2024 Cybersecurity Conference, October 30th and 31st in Atlanta. You got some really cool stickers here. I got one of these from them. So the good thing about it is that I'm hopeful that this time next week, I should have a code for you that you can go and attend that for free. Working on it. We'll see what happens. And then finally, of course, I do want to mention, if you're interested in information security for small and mid-sized businesses, there's a great book out there called Information Security for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses. Check it out on Amazon. And a little bit of a preview there. Think I will have a special for Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. Now that that's all done, would like to welcome to the podcast Kodjo Hogan. He is an information security governance and risk compliance professional. Kodjo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Greg. It's a very pleasure meeting you. We've chatted. We've gone back and forth on LinkedIn several times. So it's always nice to put a face behind the post.
And I'm glad you just kind of tilted your maybe if you could tilt it up a little bit more, but I'm glad you tilted it up because it's like that was like the only time in my life where I was taller than somebody. Like, I'm really used to that. I'm vertically challenged, as I usually say. Please, let's hear about your information security journey, how you got started in this wonderful field of InfoSec and cybersecurity, why you got started in it, and where you're at today.
Yeah, thank you for that. So my pathway to technology and cyber in general is a lot different, than most people. So in 2016, I was leaving in a small, mid-sized insurance company, and I had begun taking classes because I was a finance manager for the IT expense portfolio where they, logged all their expenses, and I was making sure that all the expenses were paid for all the IT expenditure, which could be a significant chunk for any organization. And so during that tenure, I began to take a deep dive in some of the technologies and tools that we were buying. And I became really, really fascinated in, just the field of IT and how it's always progressing, always maturing. And so I asked one of the business leaders there, like, hey, if I wanted to get into this, what would be your suggestion? Do I need to go back to school? He said, no, you already have a master's degree. He said, but you can take some technical certifications. And at the time, there was no standard boot camp. There wasn't a cybersecurity degree that you can go, or anybody that you can really talk to. It's like, how do you get into it from a very rubric perspective. So I got lucky. I went to a school called TIA.edu. It's a small school here in New York City. And they had some fantastic teachers. And so I took my very first information technology course, which was ITIL, which is more of a incident response playbook or service playbook, just kind of combined, but it's very, very low level. And I think that anybody could, really benefit from taking that if you're working adjacent to IT, just to, kind of get a feel for how things are working. And I loved it. So I just asked what the dean of the school, hey, what should I do next? And he said, oh, you should take Network Plus if you're going to take this seriously. Network Plus really wasn't. It's interesting, but I was like, this is not something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I took the class, got the certification Net Plus, and then I said, so what's next? And he said, oh, take Security Plus. So I took Security Plus, and that's when everything went off for me. And I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I took Security Plus, and then I took the CEH class, and I got my CEH certificate. And then I began to look for jobs, and it was, and it was this was around the winter of 2016, beginning spring of 2017, and I just wasn't landing anything. And said, is there anything else I could do? And the teacher, he told me, said, well, you could always take the CISSP. And, the CISSP has an associate program, it's associate of ISC, but I didn't have 5 years. I didn't have any years of IT. He was like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be able to pass. So, I went left and I said, well, I'm going to take the PMP because that seems to be like really high demand, but it wasn't high demand, but not for information security. And then finally I gave up and I said, well, I'll just take the CISSP and I'll just do my best. And I took the test, I took that class and I passed the test. And then a lot of more job doors were beginning to open for me. And then I landed my first job at a Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank here in New York City, which is a Japanese bank, a very small information security team, but I was able to get exposed to many of the domains: information security risk governance, information security engineering, IAM, disaster recovery, incident response. So it was an amazing role. And then from there, I just kind of progressed. So after that, I went and worked for a smaller healthcare startup, protecting the PHI and the PII. And then I actually taught cyber risk governance or information security risk governance, cyber strategy. And then I I was the director of GRC, governance risk compliance, which I become to be known in 2020. I did that for about 3 years. And now I'm with TD Bank as a contractor in their information security office as a BSO. So, very interesting times in the field.
Absolutely, and yeah, I love when you're talking about your first. If I got it correctly, your first full-time infosec job was working for a small bank, and I don't know about you, but my last full-time gig as a CISO was for a bank, and I had a lot of information security experience prior to that. But when I was working for the bank, I really, really refined my risk management skills. Did you find that you learned a lot of risk management when you were working for the bank?
It's funny. I was at a networking dinner and I met somebody who worked at the bank that I used to work at, and that's where we had that conversation. I said, I really hone information security risk management at the bank because when you deal with large financial institutions, they tend to have a more risk averse mindset. So they want to measure the risk first, and then they do the calculations and they say, hey, we can accept this, or we need to mitigate this immediately. But so when you get into that realm of first knowing how to measure and then how to react to it, you will really pick it up at a bank. And I find that to be more, and I've worked across education verticals, healthcare verticals, and financial services and verticals. And I find that to be more prevalent at a bank where they're really interested in measuring. And the smaller the bank is, the more in depth you get into the actual mechanisms of measuring. And we can go more into that because sometimes it's already predefined for you, where you're taking an extract from some governance document or the system that has been built. But when you work at a smaller shop, they want you to build those tools yourself or build those programs yourself, which can be extremely difficult because then you have to go against the regulators in your exam and prove why you are paid to be in the seat that you do. And regulators, they're only looking for what's wrong. They're not going to say, hey, Greg, you did a great job and 98%. They're going to say, no, well, Greg, you messed up on these two things.
Well, and they have the regulators, and I was talking about this at my talk on Wednesday. We touched on it briefly. The regulators, they have skin in the game because they are guaranteeing deposits, and it's one of the only verticals where you have that sort of setup. And I think that banks, credit unions, financial institutions, I think they do it very well because of that. And to your point, other verticals, other industries don't seem to do that. You don't really see a chief risk officer, for example, in most other industries, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of risk of not only information security, but there's a lot of other risk with doing business, of course.
And even in addition to what you're saying, security as a differentiator is going to be huge as we continue to go forward. I mean, we're seeing left and right. I mean, left and right. Every other day, there's a breach or there's a hack or there's some type of exploitation, and people are like, "Well, how did this happen?" And you look at the program that was supposed to be there to reinforce, to prevent these things from happening, and it's being deemed not sufficient, and it's coming
Well,
up.
and that's an excellent segue. Thank you to the next one. We're talking about risk, and we're talking about all the threats out there. What's one of the one or a couple of the more significant threats, information security, cybersecurity wise, to small and mid-sized businesses from your perspective today?
From my perspective, it's always insider threat, always, and data categorization. So, when I worked at JP Morgan Chase, I used to run. I did a call center operation, so I used to run, area for them where we did small businesses. And a lot of small business owners, they don't want to be in the business of the business. They just want to sell the product or what makes them happy. So they don't understand that the information that they're creating is intellectual property, that is intrinsic to how their business runs. And if it gets leaked or breached or stolen, it really impacts their ability to do business. So that's number one is, this data categorization and making sure that the nuts and the bolts of the business, the crucial data or the critical systems that are in place cannot be duplicated or modified. If you ever look at a good example is the McDonald's movie, I think it's called The Founder, where the brothers, the McDonald's, these guys, they showed everybody how to do it. Like they showed them the complete system, and I'm just like, oh my god, but it was a different time back then. But you don't want to do that today, when you show somebody exactly how your business runs, because somebody could come along and say, hey, this is the opportunity, and I can do this much better, faster, and cheaper, and I can go after a segment of the population this person is even thinking about. So that's number one. The second part is, just the naivety that people say, well, I can't be a target because I'm not that big. When you look at the U.S., and you've traveled around the globe, so when you look at the U.S. dollar compared to, some other countries, 10 for 1, 20 to 1, 200 to 1, $100, could be somebody's entire monthly salary in the U.S. And so, ransomware, cryptojacking is huge and phishing. So, and it's those two combination of things that, really put small businesses at risk. And so when I talk to a lot of small business owners, I always say, hey, this is some things that you want to think about. And they're like, well, I'm just not there yet. And I said, it happens a lot faster. Your baby grows up. It's like having kids. One day they can't eat or sleep or do anything by themselves, or not sleep, but walk by themselves, and then all of a sudden they're running down the hallways when you tell them to stop. And these things that you put in place at an early stage, have the ability to mature and grow and progress with the business. And so, just those small things. Google has a really good Google Enterprises has a really good suite to prevent data loss prevention, ransomware. Just these things that additional $20 to $30 really gives you a secure enterprise, per person. So there's just stuff like that.
Yeah, and talking about small and mid-sized businesses, it looks like you shrunk again, or maybe I grew. I don't know. Small and mid-sized businesses. This is another thing that I pointed out yesterday as well too. It's like sometimes they don't think that they're a target because they're so small, and it's like you only like you said, $100 or whatever. But the volume of it. I mean, why does Walmart do so well? It's not because that they have great margins. They have very small margins, but they have the volume of the transactions. And that's what really hits. And the bad, I don't want to say guys, the threat actors.
Right, the threat actors.
Yeah, I mean, politically correct, right?
Right.
They know that, and those little pennies add up. I mean, Office Space was a whole movie built on that whole premise of just take a fraction of a cent, and then suddenly you've got like millions of dollars. So. Yeah, it's. I don't know what we can do. Do you have any suggestions as far as what we can do to increase awareness for small and mid-sized business owners as far as these threats, insider threat, and not being a target?
I was thinking about that as I was preparing for our call this morning, and I think we need more security practitioners like yourself, where you just have a very, it's going to sound corny, but a very folksy way of talking about it. where it's not this whole enigma of, people sitting in this white room in secured spaces where, people are using acronyms to describe everything and they're talking above, and outside of a person's knowledge, but just, small to mid-sized business. And I think that, it will likely make sense to happen at the governmental or the state and local governmental initiatives where they put in place, like, okay, these are information security professionals that we are going to contract on your behalf, or we're going to pay them to come in and do assessments for your business. And then we'll be able to, provide options and tooling to make sure that your business is secure. Because, small businesses are still the backbone of the United States. And
Absolutely.
if if those go, small to mid-sized businesses, those go, a lot of, unemployment goes up. And unfortunately, a lot of these places cannot recover from a cyber incident.
Yeah, it's I got this statistic burned into my head, but it was part of the presentation. 45.9% of all employees are employed by a small business as defined by the SBA, Small Business Association, which I think is plus or minus 500. The small businesses make up 99.9% of all businesses in the United States. And yes, a lot of them are going to be single owner type deal, but a lot of them are not. And but the pragmatic way of talking with business, talking in business language, that's kind of resulted in what I would term a Schaefer axiom or a Schaefer theory. And one of them, I don't number them. It's not like the Ferengi rules of acquisition. I can't. But the amount of buzzwords and acronyms that somebody puts into a conversation is directly proportional to the BS that they're spewing, and is inversely proportional to the usefulness of whatever it is that they're trying to say. I had one person who worked for me, doesn't work for me anymore, but one of the feedback that I got from one of our clients was like that they said, well, he spends time talking all these buzzwords but never says anything.
Right.
So I totally agree with you. It's like I think if I was to parrot back what you were saying, we as security practitioners can do better to improve this if we increase our communication skills, right?
And the paradigm is so interesting now because as the CISO is as you look at the landscape, the CISO is becoming more of a business partner than a business protector. It's a partner protector piece or a partner protector relationship where the CEO has to understand exactly what you're saying, or the COO or the chief risk officer. So when you look into the to people, how well they articulate the ideas or the action items that needs to take is crucial. And so 100%, 1,000%, agree with you that drop the buzzwords, make it plain, make it so that people can understand you. Or as I had one leader tell me, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, do you really know it? Can you really simplify it? And a lot of times, people, they hide behind the acronyms and they hide behind the buzzword because makes you sound very smart, but it's an intelligent person. And just because, and I find out a lot of people who can be extremely intelligent but not very articulate, which is something that science tells us it doesn't really happen. I say, oh no, it happens all the time, because extremely intelligent people, their brain moves so fast that they can't really articulate what they're trying to say. And that's why there are people around him. Like you look at Steve Jobs, he was not very, very articulate man. He was always just like, how come you guys don't get it? And people just kind of figured it out, or he would draw it out. He was more of a visual person. But when you look at that type of expository intelligence, where people, they can't articulate with words, but they can do it with other ways, and you just kind of have to understand where they're coming from, and then you can pick up and fill up the gas. It becomes this interesting relationship. But as security professionals, we can't do that. You have to explain to people in very, very, very clear, unrefined, or 6th grade language. This is what I need you to do.
and I've found that I've tried to mentor when I've come across that folks that again, one person I'm thinking in particular would start the conversation right in the middle of the whole thing without the prelude as to what they're talking about, why they're talking about, why it's important. It's just right in the middle, and then start peppering it with buzzwords. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm a security professional. I have no idea
Right.
what you're talking about. And if I don't understand what you're talking about, then the businesses don't understand. And then everybody gets stressed out. And this profession is stressful enough as it
It's
is. We don't
stressful
need
enough.
to increase their stress. Um, but
And I
and
think,
I always go ahead.
I, no, and I think that's the reason why the risk management domain for information security is so difficult for people to grasp. Because with risk
Yes.
management, you can't hide behind buzzwords. Like I can't
And
just
it's
say,
not, it's not binary either. It's not yes or no. It's like
right,
it's an art. You have to figure out what is the sweet spot between security and accessibility, is that
right.
graph that we always say. And a lot of people just can't
They
they
can't.
can't grasp it. So
Because when you ask them to go really deep into their domain, let's look at IAM and cloud, and sorry, identity and access management, and you look at access or parent-child access or grandfather access, where somebody comes in and they say, okay, well, you're grandfathered in because your role requires this, but now I'm going to explain to you why I'm taking this specific access away. Because it's going to reduce risk over here, and that's what we want to use to make sure our customers that their data is safe, and show the regulators that we're governing our systems in a way that makes sense to along with the mandates or regulations or the guidelines that they put out. But you can't buzzword that away, right? You can't
no.
say, well, I'm going to install a firewall or IM tool, and OAuth is going to solve all this stuff, because at the end of the day, when you do the risk assessment, it's going to show whether or not you did what you were supposed to do or not. Or if you do your audit, it's going to show whether or not you did what you had to do or not. And so, to take action on buzzwords is very difficult for people, where the soup hits the ground. And the interesting thing about our profession is that a lot of people get ahead because they know the buzzwords. They know the speak, and it sounds right. But then you just keep on seeing what's going on inside of our industry right now. A lot of professional churn and arsenal, where people are frustrated because they're like, I spent all this money and I don't seem to accomplish much, because the people that you spent the money with, they can't really explain it to you. Like, okay, this is what you bought. You didn't buy a firewall. You bought brakes. You didn't buy EDR, IDR, or all these systems. You bought an airbag. You bought
Yeah.
locks. You did stuff, and putting it in a way that somebody, oh, okay, so my house is safe and I can drive my car off firewall and go. Perfect. Right?
And,
But
and,
that's
and
change.
as far as acronyms go too, it's just like one piece of advice for everybody out there from me. I've been doing this for 35 years. I'm not afraid to ask if I don't know something or if I forgot it, because it
Right.
changes so much in this field. It's like I'll get people, particularly like I said, going to this government contract. A lot of governments, they love acronyms. They more
Right.
so than we do. And I had to stop people a couple of times where it's just like, what does that mean?
Right.
They kind of look at me. It's like, well, you've been doing this for so long. You got some gray hair there. You must have been doing it for a while. It's like, I'm not afraid to ask. It's like, I mean, the security field is so broad. It's like, how about I pull out some acronyms from 1995 and see how well
Right.
you do, archaeologists. But we need to move on to the risk, to the stress portion. What's one of the
Yeah.
things that you do to decompress from the stresses of our industry?
Oh man, you have to unplug. There is no Green Lantern battery where you can just recite your mantra and recharge. So you have to find things that fill you up from the outside, because our jobs are rewarding, but our jobs are very, very stressful, and no one can do it 24 hours a day. So you have to decompress and unplug. And so that has been my piece, is to make sure that on Friday at 5, I'm done, and I'm available not only to myself, to my family, to my community. So I spend time with friends. I spend time doing creative stuff. I think that the thing that has really benefited me was finding a creative outlet. So writing, taking pictures, painting, anything that exercises that different side of your brain that you're not uh, uh, explicitly drawing on during the week to complete these roles, really, really helps. Uh, but definitely decompressing and unplugging, because career burnout is real, and you're going to be called out, and you can run from fire to fire to fire. and you will burn out, and that will be that. And then, somebody else will be, looking to, fulfill the role. And that's not good because, all of that knowledge, that goes with that, with the burnout at 10, 15 years, all the knowledge goes right out the door. So, really take time to preserve and care for yourself. Get a massage or go for a run, go for a walk in nature. Remember to reconnect with the things that you love, and that will really frame you out.
It's so beneficial, even just something like getting up and going for a walk for like a few minutes. Just I encourage my wife to do that. It's just like, because she gets so focused in what she does, and she's wonderful at what she does. She's one of the best in the field, but she could be sitting at her desk for 6 hours. I'm like, honey, just take a couple minutes, walk around the office suite, and just sit down. It'll take you 5 minutes, and it helps so much. And I think I finally got through to her, so I'm very happy about it. Kodjo, what are your future plans?
So my future plans is, I want to continue to progress in the field of information security. So, I've done information risk management as a leader. So, getting back into, of a blend of, all right, taking information risk, assessing it, and now, pulling out the technical engineering execution. And so, really being able to build both sides of the program, not just strictly relying on the GRC. And so, hoping to accomplish that, moving to a role that I'm afforded that opportunity in the near future. But, other than that, continue to learn. I did take a look at your VCSO class that you recommended. And so, I'm looking to schedule some time so I can go through that class, because I think it's very beneficial. And I think that's going to be the future of, fractional CISOs, really providing that expertise. But and continue to mentor, I have several mentors now, mentees now, and I'm being mentored, but several mentors now, for people who are, in the field or trying to get into the field. And don't get me wrong, there is no golden path at this point to get into cyber if you're not in it. I don't care what anybody says, when I did it, it was, it was the right time for it, but this year, things are changing so much that, as the industry continues to settle over the next probably 12 to 18 months, it'll be a lot clearer on like how to do it. But
and I'm like, don't ask me. When I did it, it didn't exist. It's like it kind of like grew up around me, and I got sucked into it like a black hole, kicking and screaming. So
right, and in 2017, even 7 years was very different than 2024. So just be patient and and it's just an interesting time to be in our field. I think that our field is growing up, really going through some growing pains of, really defining what it is and what it needs to be. And then, I think that there will be some light at the end of the tunnel coming soon.
And I'm glad you mentioned about the CDC, so I forgot to mention that at the beginning too. If anybody is interested in the next cohort is beginning in October, I believe, and I can arrange for $500 off on the tuition. All you need to do is just direct message me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way, and I'll send you the link and the code, and you can enjoy that wonderful class. It's really, I enjoyed it very much. I don't promote things that I don't believe in, and that's one of the few things I do. Well, Kodjo, thank you so much for joining.
That's why I was like, made me so interested in it. I said, this is the first time Greg's ever quoted anything outside of his book, so I really need to look at it.
Yes, and buy the book. Kodjo, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate the fact that we were able to do this, and even with the remnants of that hurricane, which is still out here in Huntsville. It didn't really hit Huntsville, but it went a little bit to the east, which I'm very happy about. But praying for the folks that were affected by this. But loved our conversation, and hope to chat again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. And, it's been a blast. And if you need anything else, please let me know. And, prayers up for the people affected by Hurricane Helene as well.
Amen, brother. And everybody, stay secure.